all of these things help meet our specific emotions. And as we help meet those emotions, as we apply the truth of who God is, then we can surrender. We need to surrender these things as they come, pray it through, and then walk in wisdom after we've surrendered our emotions. But the Bible is clear that we're not to be led by them, that wisdom is the lead. So acquiring wisdom requires that we surrender them to God. We're straight with Him about it, just like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. We name what we're feeling. Yeah. We own what we're feeling. We externalize it if possible. It helps your brain to get it out, to talk it through. And then we say, okay, Lord, help me to walk in wisdom here. And biblical wisdom is the way that we walk through our world, showing that we have faith in our Savior. We're going to need wisdom to walk through all of this. I mean, different ways people perceive the crisis and mechanisms for handling it. We need to have wisdom to go through that. And so that's the kind of faith, that tenacious, resilient, I know who you are and I know you can help me. That's, I think, what we want to model as we move forward in faith here.
You know what we're about to do? We're about to get real. We're about to have conversations that Christians have behind closed doors, the scary ones, the ones that make you feel uncomfortable. That's where we're going. Why? Because we're family. Ustedes son mi familia.
So this is the Brian and Janelle podcast. She's Janelle and I'm Brian. If you don't want to miss anything, all you have to do is just hit that subscribe button to get a notification whenever we drop a new episode. This is the Brian and Janelle podcast. Crystal Kershaw with us right now from Fieldstone Counseling, talking about 3 things we need to keep in mind as we move forward in faith, as we re-enter normal life again slowly. So the first word is see, and you've been giving some great thoughts on this, although I think implied in there is something interesting as well. It's that you're not saying, cover your eyes or pretend like everything's normal or, put your fingers in your ear and go, la, 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 I'm fine. Mm-hmm. It implies confronting in some way, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This has changed the way that we go about life, and it will probably continue to change the way we move through our lives for a very long time. And so part of seeing is saying, okay, here's where I am, Lord, and here's where you are, and I know that you're helping me walk through this. Now, we're embodied souls, all of us made in the image of God, and that means that sometimes our bodies will start to feel anxious. And as we start to move back into situations with all this information that we did not necessarily have before, and all of these fear cycles that have been sort of conjured up in this season, we may find that our bodies start to feel anxious and overwhelmed and overcome. And that's when we want to really use the resources of our faith. We do have the righteousness of Christ, and we have been given gifts. And as we said before, as we see that we've walked through this season and other seasons of uncertainty, these are kind of the altar stones of our faith that we need to grab onto and say, okay, Lord, I know you've been here, and I know you've been here in the last 8 weeks, and I know you're going to be here as I move forward. But our bodies may start to feel anxious. We may want to work on some grounding exercises, and I always like to work on those grounding exercises and to add a spiritual component to them, because it helps me get focused on the vertical in that situation. So just some simple ones that you can do anywhere. Grounding exercises bring you into the moment and help you remember, I'm here, God's here, I'm walking forward in faith. So some that you can do anywhere. One that I often will do is just open and close both of my hands. Just that movement, I focus on that. And while I'm doing that, I focus on the idea that God has me in his hand. So as I open and close my hand, I can trust him. He's got me. He's got me in his hand. Another one that you can do is cross your arms. And so with your hands, grab hold of your shoulders, your upper arms across, and then squeeze one side and then the other and back and forth, just to kind of bring you in the moment. I'm here. I'm safe. I'm moving forward. And as you do that, those squeezes, remind yourself of the truth of Psalms. I love it. Elizabeth Elliot used to say this every time she opened her program, Gateway to Joy. She used to say, I'm loved with an everlasting love, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Just a way to bring that to your heart in that moment. And the grounding exercises also involve just tensing muscles and releasing them while you're breathing. So another one that I'll do sometimes is just tense my quads or my calves or my arm muscles and just let go of that, breathing out, and just say to myself, right here and right now, God's mercies are new, and He has a plan for me. It just helps. It helps bring you into the place where you're at. So if you move into a new situation and all of a sudden these things start, bubbling up and you feel that the anxiety is building, good to do some grounding.
I like squeezing arms better than like slapping myself in the face or pinching my arm. I feel like that's much more gentle.
A little less noticeable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the first one, C, and some of those grounding exercises. What's your second of three words you have for us to keep moving forward in faith as we re-enter normal life?
The second one is to center yourself and center yourself on truth specifically, because what we tend to do is look vertically since we're living vertically, and we have to remind ourselves that our God is not like us. Mm-hmm. He is bigger than this, and our perception of who God is and how He works, we need to be reminded it is very different from the way that we work and the way that we live. So center yourself on the truth of who God is. Remind yourself that God works in ways that you cannot understand. I think that's been really speaking to me in this pandemic. I'm reminded of 2 Kings 6. That's that account of when the Arameans were surrounding Elisha and his servant. And Elisha's servant, sees them and he starts freaking out. And the prophet says to him, God says to Elisha, hey, I've got this, basically. And so Elisha says to his servant, don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. It's just a beautiful phrase, and it's true for us today. Those who are with us, greater is He who is in us than he who is in the world, in any aspect of the world. And then Elisha says to God, please, Lord, open his eyes so he may see. And that's when the servant sees that the hills all surrounding them are full of horses and fiery chariots. Why? Because God is doing more than they can perceive. The same is true right now. God is working. We just can't really see sometimes how he's working. So as we center, we're going to really focus on him, just like Peter walking on the water to Jesus. We're going to fix our focus on him, which will allow us to move forward in faith. So I like to think about who he is and to recount that in my prayers, and even when I'm moving forward out in the world, right? God is almighty. He's omnipotent. He's sovereign. He is the beginning and the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He is omniscient. He knows where I'm at, so I can talk to him about it as I move faith forward. He's omnipresent. He is not, he didn't check out in the last 8 weeks. He isn't checked out today. He's here. He's working. He's mysterious. He's miraculous. He's above and beyond what I can imagine. And I have to keep that in my frame in order to walk vertically in light of the vertical of the truth of my life. I am a blood-bought daughter of the King. To walk vertically on this horizontal plane, I have to keep in mind who he is.
Crystal, before we move on to your last word to help us during this pandemic, I have a question about centering ourselves on truth. I know many are struggling with anxiety, and a lot of it comes with the uncertainty. And I know personally, I've struggled in the past with like moving forward in the future in my mind. Oh, maybe this will happen, and maybe this will happen, and what if this happens? What's some encouragement that you would have in terms of, especially with the idea of centering on truth?
Well, part of centering on truth is the reality that God, because of his omniscience, because of his great love for us, is there for us, and that we can walk through this with him. So that really does move into the next part of the triad, which is surrendering to him. We need to talk it through with him, and we need to get out those feelings. Whether you are just vocalizing them in your car as you say, okay, Lord, I'm moving back into this office setting now, but I am feeling this way. I'm moving back into seeing a friend again, but I am concerned about this. Or whether you're journaling about them or whether you're just speaking them out in your prayers, surrender them. And this is where we really need to pray our way through our day. Prayer is not just a formal time. It is an ongoing lifestyle. We are called to pray without ceasing, and that's what we're going to need to do to be able to say, okay, Lord, you know, this is how I'm feeling now. As close as you can get to labeling exactly what you're feeling, that will be helpful. And you can use online synonyms. You can use an emotions wheel. That's something that counselors often use to help people identify exactly what they're feeling. And then think about who God is. Henry Blackaby has a beautiful addendum in Experiencing God, the names and titles of God, and that's available online also. I would print that out and take it with you as you go about your day, because look at who God is, all the different aspects of who God is. He's the God who sees us. He's the God who knows us. He is a righteous king. He is a righteous judge. He is kind and caring. He's a gentle shepherd. All of these things help meet our specific emotions. And as we help meet those emotions, as we apply the truth of who God is, as we center on that and apply it to exactly where we're at, then we can surrender. And that's really the last part. We need to surrender these things as they come, pray it through, and then walk in wisdom. After we've surrendered our emotions, and they are part of our embodiment, our reflection of God's creation. But the Bible is clear that we're not to be led by them, that wisdom is the lead. So acquiring wisdom requires that we surrender them to God. We're straight with him about it, just like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. We name what we're feeling. Yeah. We own what we're feeling. We externalize it if possible. It helps your brain to get it out, to talk it through. And then we say, okay, Lord, help me to walk in wisdom here. Now, what is wisdom? And biblical wisdom is worth studying right now. A study of Proverbs in this season would not go awry, because we're going to need wisdom to walk through all of this. I mean, even the different ways people perceive the crisis and mechanisms for handling it, we need to have wisdom to go through that.
Surrendering to wisdom. Help us understand the depth and breadth of this concept.
Surrendering to wisdom is keeping in mind really the chief end of man, if we recall our catechism, which is to give God glory and to enjoy him forever. And so wisdom is the way that we walk through our world, showing that we have faith in our Savior. And so wisdom is the chief thing. Proverbs 4:7 says, so therefore get wisdom. And wisdom has many attributes biblically that are worth thinking of, because this is how we want to walk. We want to walk in this wise way as we go forward, because people are watching us as believers, our kids, our families, our friends. We're giving God glory in the way that we move through if we are walking in wisdom. So wisdom consists of really identifying and owning our emotions. Like we said, be straight with God. Give them specific labels. Talk and pray them through with him, because he knows your heart. And he longs for his children to turn to him like any father does. And then surrendering them in prayer means, okay, Lord, you know what I'm feeling. You know where I'm at right now. You know, okay, I'm breathing. I'm reminding myself of your presence. I'm grounding. I'm here. I know you've called me here. And so, Lord, what is the wisdom here? Just show me how to walk in wisdom. Guide my feet. Move my steps. Help me to get the right perspective and the right paradigm. And then really listening to God's voice and being teachable. I think teachability is a huge part of wisdom. Are we willing to hear his voice, or are we going to be frozen in our own thought patterns? Are we going to be able to say, okay, Lord, you're sovereign, and I know you love me, and I know you have a plan for me, so that's how I'm going to move forward. Beautiful example of this is the Syrophoenician woman in Mark 7. She's a Gentile, and she knows that Jesus is in a house nearby where she lives, and she has a daughter who's possessed by a demon. So she goes, she sneaks in the house, and she asks for his help. And Jesus says, well, you know, I came to help the Jews, and it's not right to take the bread for the children and give it to the dogs. She has such a strong sense of who Jesus is that she says, oh, but Lord, even the puppies under the table get the crumbs. And so that's the kind of faith, that tenacious, resilient, I know who you are and I know you can help me. That's, I think, what we want to model as we move forward. And for that response, Jesus says, go, your daughter is made well. And when she arrives home, the demon has left her daughter. That's just a beautiful example of this kind of faith-forward, I know who you are, Lord. I know you can help me. I'm going to walk tenaciously, resiliently forward in faith here.
And, you know, if you're having trouble doing these things that Crystal Kershaw of Fieldstone Counseling is recommending, to see, center, and surrender to the Lord, actually counseling would be a wonderful option for you. It's something we tell you all the time. Healthy people get counseling. Oh, yeah. It's a great, normal thing for people to do. And Crystal, if folks want to get connected to a counselor, how do they do that through Fieldstone?
Go to fieldstonecounseling.org. We are taking intakes. We are actively doing remote counseling. And that is part of what we're doing. We're helping people walk through this in their own situations, given their own sets of circumstances, and really thinking about what their faith looks like and how we can use the resources that God gives us to help them move forward. So absolutely, we're doing lots of counseling. We would love to help here.
Keep this movement rolling in spite of the difficulties, and we're going to have a few more difficulties. Keep climbing. Keep moving. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving.
Hey, hold up. Where are you going? You know you liked your time with us. You want more. So look down, hit that button right there, subscribe, and you'll get updated episodes, and then you can hang some more.
And guess what? You can help us. How? A 5-star rating.
You can also hang with us live, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m., interact with us, talk with us, download the Moody Radio app.
Or at brianandjanelle.org.
And we don't put all this together all by ourselves. There's some great people behind all this production. We want to thank Ron Eastwood, Kelly Ryder, Paul Carter, Doug Hayner, Mike Reynolds, and our awesome and fearless leader, Josue Villa.
And finally, this podcast is a production of Moody Radio in Cleveland, a ministry of Moody Bible Institute.
Well, Brian.